SoCon Media Day here on the field of 68. We are now joined by Wofford head coach Dwight Perry. And Dwight, you are a rarity in mid-major college basketball in 2024. You have a team with a veteran roster that returns almost everyone, particularly your two best players, especially Corey Tripp. Dylan Bailey is back. You got all but about 8 points per game coming back. How did you do it, man? How did you make this happen? It's a miracle.
Yeah, it definitely speaks to the nature of college basketball, the fact that that's in the minority now. Which, I mean, it is what it is, right? As we all know, we can have full segments talking about where we're at with the landscape of college basketball, but the reality is that's where college basketball is. So you either can deal with that and try to tackle it head on and try to figure out where you fit into that, or you can continue to get frustrated. So we choose to do the former. And, as a result, by no means are we perfect, but I feel like our staff and our program, is at a place now with some stability from a culture standpoint, from a talent standpoint. You're always trying to get better. You're always striving to improve. But I think our guys genuinely enjoy being student athletes, both of those things, students and athletes here at Wofford. Again, not to say that we're perfect. There's always areas for growth from a community standpoint, academics, basketball, but I do think our guys really enjoy the experience. And, in today's day and age, for Corey Tripp, or Kyler Filowich, a Jackson Civils, a Dylan Bailey, for those guys, even a Jeremy Lorenz, to have a pretty good freshman year, for those guys to have success and to essentially feel like we have unfinished business and wanting to see this thing through, at least another year. I think it also, as much as obviously our staff deserves credit, as they should, credit definitely goes to not only those players, but as we all know in today's day and age, their families and their communities. Because as we all know, right, it's never just, very rarely anymore is it ever just one person's decision. It's always multiple people that have say and influence. And so I think everyone a part of that process deserves credit for allowing us to coach their young men for another year.
We'll talk about Corey Tripp for a second. One of the coolest stats I've seen, 6 times last year, either put you in overtime, game winner, or he tied it at the end of the game. You've been around some really good players, even when you played with Jody Meeks and some of those guys, and now Corey Tripp. What is it about guys like that? I mean, obviously he's going to be in the mix for Player of the Year in the SoCon. What is it about him that makes you feel like he's going to be able to continue this through out the course of this season as well?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, there's guys that, through the years that have, right, just that it factor or that, clutch gene.
Yeah.
And as much coaches, we like to say, like we are instilling it and we're teaching them, like some of that, right, guys just have it or they don't. And that doesn't mean they're bad players, but, some of that is just they have it inside of them. They rise to the occasion. And Corey's, right, he epitomizes that. There's no secret. Corey had a really good year last year, but he didn't shoot the ball well from 3. But to your point, T.O., I mean, if you look at the last minute of regulation overtime, I bet you he shot 40% from 3. And so, again, it goes back to, I think, first and foremost, not only does he have, what it takes to rise to the occasion, he works incredibly hard. And I think that's also the common denominator with the different guys, that I've been around over the years is everything they're doing at the end of the game. It obviously surprises, the spectators and fans, but those guys are getting up those type of shots day after day after day. And Corey's no different. And so his work ethic has definitely helped with that. His confidence and belief in himself has helped. I think the confidence that his teammates and as coaches we have, again, putting him in those different positions, whether it's 3s, 2s, attacks, driving, he's consistently made the right plays. And I think, the next step is, as we all know, with really good and great teams, you're inevitably going to find yourself in positions to win close games, and you have to figure out how to do that. But I think what separates good from great teams, and that's the step we're trying to take, is there's also you can't put a number on it. There's times where games shouldn't even get to where it's close because you're doing what's necessary the first 38, 39 minutes of the game on both ends of the floor, to where now instead of having to rely on heroics or late game plays the last minute or two, you've done what's necessary to now where it looks like a ho-hum, 7-8 point victory. But in reality, as we all know, those are also hard to come by because it takes a lot of work and discipline.
So these days, everything's about NIL, all your resources, right? Everybody wants to just save money, put it towards NIL so you can keep players' retention and then go get them. You decided to take a tour, an off-season tour, which was huge, years ago, and it's become a little bit, honestly, more rare these days because people are using that money for NIL. You went to Egypt and Greece. Awesome. Yep. I mean, I can't believe I wasn't invited, first of all. But
you didn't get the invitation?
I mean, think about that. I might have gone. Like Egypt and Greece,
man,
it's amazing. Why? Why did you decide to do that, number one, especially with a veteran team? A lot of coaches would do it with a brand new team. You had a lot of returning guys. Number one, why? Number two, what was the coolest or best thing about the trip?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, Jeff, we're doubling down on our culture and the experience. And again, I think a lot of times when people say that, you're expecting to bat 1,000. Like, all the way from a Kentucky, Duke, Carolina to Kansas, right? Whatever, blue blood, UConn, all the way down to, 368. No one's going to bat 1,000 every year on never losing a player, on a kid's experience being a 10 out of 10 every single year, right? That's unrealistic. But having said that, we're doubling down on, at the end of the day, with how our college and institution is, we are still going to be a retention-based program. And that's not to say we won't selectively have, transfers. There's guys on our team, right? We already mentioned 3 guys on our team last year that transferred in. And so there's always going to be a place for the right type of transfers. But by and large, we're going to really be heavy on culture. And so to your point, we also want to be in line with the school. And so from a school standpoint, the school is extremely supportive, of having a holistic approach. Basketball is super important. Academics are extremely important. But again, you have to have a holistic approach. There's a big part of why kids come to college. And it's to be well-rounded and be exposed to different types of people, backgrounds, cultures, and taking a foreign trip's a big part of that. I think even before kind of your point, Jeff, not only that, of people are going away from foreign trips, I think now and again, it's not to knock Canadian or Bahamian culture, any type of countries that are maybe close by from a logistics and proximity standpoint. But I think it's also important, we were intentional about sending our guys to different continents like Africa and Europe, going to Egypt, going to Greece. The fact that we have a kid on our team that's from Egypt, definitely played a role in that. A sophomore, Bilal Shakiri, who's from Cairo. And then also, and this is part of it, the fact that, we think, Egypt and Greece can sometimes be so far apart because they're different continents and obviously different countries. But, I mean, it's 2 hours across the Mediterranean Sea. Going from Cairo to Athens is like the distance of going from Greenville, Spartanburg to Chicago, right? And crazy. It opens up your eyes and you really start, again, that's a big reason why you do it, is Egypt and Greece are so different and they're so close. And in a 10-day span to be able to experience both of those, our guys loved it. And to your point, yeah, there's definitely NIL, opportunities and resources that can go towards that. But at the end of the day, a big part of why kids are going to come to Wofford and just as importantly, stay at Wofford, it's never going to be a transactional deal, right? It's never going to be purely about the money. Because if it is, not only are we not going to have those kids and have success with those kids, we're never going to be able to retain those kids. Because at the end of the day, the reality is what the reality is. There are higher level programs that will always have more money and always have more resources. And that's right. We can beat our head against the wall about why it should be or how that can change. But until it does, it behooves us to pour all of our time, energy, and resources in to figuring out what allows our players to have the best experience at Wofford. And so, being able to go on a cool foreign trip, I mean, that's part of it. And I think even though we do have, especially like you guys said, compared to the majority of NCAA, way more continuity, not only do we have 3 freshmen and we bring in a transfer, we have 4 new guys, but also like, even though we have majority of our team returning, the majority of our team is still figuring out different roles. So yeah, like guys are coming back that were here, but they're not going to be slotted in the exact same role, being asked to do the exact same thing. So in some ways, I look at it too, like we do have a brand new team. I mean, I'm not blind to understanding the continuity that we're fortunate to have, but also there's still a lot for us to figure out, which I view as a good thing, of kind of figuring out who plays well with who, what can guys do, how can they expand their game. They've been working on their game in the off season. How can that now be applied, and how is that going to be applicable to the 24-25 season? And so it was a no-brainer for us, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dwight, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you jumping on SoCon Media Day, and we are going to be hearing from a couple of your players here on the Field of 68 coming up next.